The sun was gentle that afternoon. People sat outside a small cafe near the park, sipping coffee, chatting about life. Some looked down at their phones. Others watched strangers pass by. Keanu Reeves sat alone at a corner table. He wore a plain black t-shirt, old jeans, and a calm look on his face. He liked it this way. No cameras, no noise. Just a moment of peace with his cup of tea. Keanu looked around. He saw a young girl standing by the cafe's gate. She looked about 12, maybe 13. Her dress was faded and too big for her small frame. She held a plastic bag in one hand, and her other hand kept tugging at her hair nervously. Her eyes met Keanu's for a moment. Then she looked away, embarrassed, as if she shouldn't be there. Keanu felt something inside him. He had seen this look before, the look of someone fighting the world with an empty stomach and a heart full of hope. He smiled gently and nodded at her, but the girl did not move. Instead, she looked at the people sitting near her, as if waiting for permission. People ignored her. Some whispered, rolling their eyes at her torn shoes and dusty skin. A waiter walked up to her, frowning. "Hey, you can't beg here. Go somewhere else," he said harshly. The girl stepped back, clutching her bag closer. She didn't say a word. Keanu stood up. He placed some cash on his table to cover his tea, then walked over to the girl. His voice was soft, kind, almost like a friend's. "Are you hungry?" he asked. The girl looked at him, unsure if he was joking. Her lips trembled. "Can I have lunch with you?" she whispered. Her voice was so quiet that the waiter almost laughed. But Keanu nodded without thinking twice. "Yes," he said. "Come, sit with me." People turned to watch. Some took out their phones, pretending to text but secretly recording. What was this rich movie star doing, sitting with a poor, dirty girl? The girl sat opposite Keanu. Her tiny fingers shook as she placed her bag under the chair. She looked around, worried that someone would push her away again. Keanu smiled at her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she said shyly. "My name is Emma." Keanu called the waiter. The same man who had tried to shoo Emma away now came back, red-faced. Forced to serve her, Keanu asked for the menu. "Emma, what do you want to eat?" he asked. Emma looked at the menu as if it was written in another language. She didn't know what to choose. "Anything," she whispered. "I'm just hungry." Keanu ordered pasta for her, along with fresh juice and bread. He ordered a sandwich for himself. As they waited, he asked her where she was from. Emma told him about her mother, who worked 2 jobs but still couldn't feed her children properly. Her father had left when she was 6. Sometimes she sold flowers near the traffic lights to buy food for her little brother. As she spoke, Keanu listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He remembered his own life, how he had lost people he loved, how he had slept on friends' couches, how he had fought loneliness when the world thought he had everything. He saw himself in Emma's trembling voice. Their food arrived. Emma ate slowly at first, afraid someone might yell at her to leave. Keanu kept talking to her, telling her funny stories about when he was young. He made her laugh, and her shoulders relaxed. She finished her pasta, and for the first time that day, she felt safe. But not everyone was happy. At a table nearby, a well-dressed couple whispered loud enough for Keanu to hear. "Look at him, sitting with that dirty girl. It's all for show," the man said. His wife giggled. "Maybe he's trying to look like a saint." Keanu looked at them, his eyes calm but sharp. He didn't say anything to them. Instead, he turned back to Emma. "Emma, do you go to school?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, Mama can't pay for it anymore. I want to go back." But her voice trailed off. Keanu took a sip of his tea. His mind was already making a plan. He couldn't fix the whole world, but maybe he could change one small world for this girl. He asked her where she stayed, who she trusted, who could help her if she got sick. Emma answered every question, her eyes wide with hope now. As they finished lunch, Keanu asked the waiter for the bill. He left a big tip, enough to make the waiter blush with shame for how he had treated Emma. Then Keanu turned to Emma and handed her a small card. "This is my friend's number," he said. "He works with kids like you. He will help you go back to school, and I'll make sure you never have to eat alone like this again." Emma stared at the card as if it was a treasure. She didn't know what to say. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. She reached across the table and hugged Keanu. People around them watched in silence now, their whispers gone. In that hug, they saw something they had forgotten. Kindness does not care about clothes, money, or status. Kindness is pure. As Keanu walked out of the cafe with Emma, he knew this was just the beginning. He knew that some people would call it charity, others would call it publicity. But he didn't care. He cared about one thing no child should: feel alone in a world so full of people. And somewhere deep in his heart, Keanu felt his own scars heal a little, just by sitting with a hungry girl and sharing lunch. This was only the first step. The world would soon find out what happened next, and they would never see kindness the same way again. Keanu and Emma stepped out of the cafe. The sun was brighter now, but Emma still held onto the sleeve of Keanu's shirt, afraid he might disappear like a dream. She had never imagined that a man she had only seen on old movie posters could sit with her, eat with her, and promise to help her. People stared as they walked down the street together. Some took photos, others whispered. But Keanu kept his head down, guiding Emma gently so she wouldn't feel all the eyes on her. When they reached the small park across the street, Keanu sat with Emma on a bench under a big tree. Emma opened her plastic bag and pulled out an old teddy bear. Its fur was torn in places, and one eye was missing. She hugged it tightly. "This is Tommy," she said shyly. "My papa gave it to me before he left." Her eyes dropped to the ground. Keanu didn't push her to say more. He just nodded, understanding how little things could mean so much when you had so little left. After a few minutes, Emma asked, "Do you think your friend will really help me?" Her voice was filled with hope but also fear. She had heard many promises before. Neighbors who said they'd help, teachers who said they'd try, but no one ever came back. Keanu looked her in the eyes. "Yes, Emma, he will, and I will too. But you must trust me, okay?" She nodded slowly, trying to believe him. As they talked, a young woman approached them. She wore jeans and a plain blouse, holding a small notepad. Her name was Lily, a freelance journalist who had been in the cafe. Earlier, she had seen everything. "Hi," she said softly. "I don't want to disturb you. I saw what you did for her. Can I ask you why?" Keanu glanced at Emma, who shrank behind his arm. "Emma, it's okay," he said, then turned to Lily. "Why?" "Because she's hungry. Because no one should sit alone when they need help. That's all." His answer was so simple, yet Lily felt her eyes sting with tears. "Can I share your story?" Lily asked carefully. Keanu looked at Emma again. He could see her fear. She didn't want to become someone's headline. "Not her story," Keanu said gently. "But you can share this. Tell people to look around. Tell them kindness costs nothing. That's enough." Lily nodded, respecting his wish. She slipped him her card and left them alone under the tree. For a while, Keanu and Emma watched people walking their dogs, children running around. It was peaceful. Emma's stomach was full. Her mind was still spinning, but she felt safe. Suddenly, a boy came running up to them. He was about Emma's age, his hair messy, his clothes just as worn. He stopped when he saw Keanu. "Emma, where were you?" "Mama's looking for you." He grabbed her hand, worried. Emma looked up at Keanu. "This is my brother, Sam," she said. Keanu bent down and smiled at Sam. "Hi, Sam, don't worry. Your sister's okay. We just had lunch." Sam looked at his sister's bright eyes and smiled shyly. "Thank you, mister," he said. Keanu stood and asked, "Where's your mama? Maybe I can meet her." Sam and Emma led him to a row of old buildings nearby. They climbed 3 flights of broken stairs, every step creaking under their feet. When they reached the door, Emma knocked gently. A tired woman opened the door. Her face was lined with worry and exhaustion. Her hair was tied back, and her eyes widened when she saw her children with Keanu. "Emma, Sam, where were you? I was so worried." She pulled them both close. Then she looked at Keanu, confused. "Mom," Keanu said kindly, "I'm Keanu. I met Emma today. We had lunch. I hope that's okay." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand. "I know you. You're him. But why? Why my daughter? Keanu stepped inside the tiny apartment. It had one bed, a broken chair, and a small stove. There was a cracked window covered with plastic to keep out the wind. He could see how hard this woman had tried to make it a home. Despite having almost nothing, Emma told me about you. Keanu said softly, I'd like to help, not with just money, with a chance. I want Emma to go back to school. I want you to have some rest. May I help? The woman fell to her knees, holding Emma and Sam close. I've prayed every night for someone to help us, she whispered. But I never thought it would be you. Keanu knelt beside her. He didn't want her to see him as a movie star or a hero. He just wanted her to know that good people still existed. He gave her the same card he gave Emma, his friend's number, a promise that help would come soon. My friend works with families like yours. I'll cover the rent for now. We'll find a better place too. You just focus on loving your children, he said. Emma hugged her mother tight. Sam stood beside them, hope flickering in his tired eyes. The small room suddenly felt warmer, as if a heavy door had been opened and light was pouring in. As Keanu left the building that evening, he didn't know that Lily's tiny story would spread like fire. She didn't write names, she didn't post a picture, but people began to talk about a famous man who shared lunch with a hungry girl and promised her a new chance. And in the days to come, that simple act would wake up hearts that had been asleep for too long. 3 days later, the morning sun rose over the city like any other day. But for Emma and her family, everything was already changing. Emma's mother, Sophia, woke up to the sound of a knock on their old door. She opened it to find a kind-looking man in a sweater holding a folder in his hands. He introduced himself as David, the friend Keanu had promised would come. Emma peeked from behind her mother's legs, still clutching her teddy bear, Tommy. Sam yawned sleepily, rubbing his eyes. David knelt to their level and smiled. Hi Emma, hi Sam. Keanu told me you're both very brave. We're going to help you, okay? Sophia was nervous. So many people had promised help before. But David spoke so gently, so patiently, explaining every detail. He worked with a local children's charity that made sure kids like Emma could go back to school, have clean clothes, and eat warm meals every day. David handed Sophia a small envelope. Inside was money for a month's rent and groceries. Sophia's hands shook as she read the note attached. No worries now. Focus on loving your kids. Keanu. Tears ran down her cheeks, and she whispered thank you to the ceiling, as if God could hear her through the cracked walls. Later that day, Emma and Sam walked with David to a tiny community center. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was bright and full of laughter. There were other kids there, some reading, some drawing, some just sitting quietly like Emma had done for so long. A teacher welcomed her with a warm smile and a sandwich. Emma, would you like to draw something? She asked. Emma hadn't held a crayon in months. Her fingers were stiff at first, but soon her small hands moved over the paper, shapes and colors filling the page. She drew a big tree, like the one in the park where she had sat with Keanu. Under the tree was a bench, and next to it was a man and a little girl. Emma's eyes sparkled as she showed the drawing to Sam. That's me and him, she said proudly. While Emma settled in, David took Sophia aside. They sat on an old wooden bench near the window. Sophia, we're going to help you find a better job, David said. There's training available, sewing, cooking, office work. Whatever you choose, we'll stand by you. Sophia nodded, her shoulders lighter than they had felt in years. She couldn't stop thinking about how a simple lunch had turned into hope for her family. Meanwhile, Keanu sat in his small apartment that evening, staring at his phone. He had received updates from David. Emma was safe. She had eaten well. She had drawn for the first time in months. He closed his eyes and let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. People often asked him why he did these things. Why? He didn't just write a check and walk away. But he knew money wasn't enough. Presence was what people needed. A kind word, a listening ear, a moment of real care. Keanu's phone buzzed with a message from Lily, the young journalist. She sent him a link. Her article, the one about the man at the cafe, had gone viral. She hadn't used Keanu's name or Emma's, but people had put the pieces together. Hashtags like hashtag be kind like him and hashtag lunch with love were everywhere. Strangers from all over the world were talking about the little girl who asked for lunch. And the man who said yes. Keanu sighed. He never wanted attention, but maybe this was good. Maybe people would see that kindness didn't need a camera. Maybe they would start looking around at the people they ignored every day. The next morning, Keanu decided to visit the community center. He wore his old cap pulled low, hoping people wouldn't notice him. But as soon as he walked through the small gate, he heard tiny footsteps. Keanu, Emma ran up to him, her shoes dusty but her face bright. She threw her arms around his waist. "I have something for you," she said, pulling out her drawing. Keanu knelt down and looked at the picture, the tree, the bench, the man, and the girl. He smiled so wide his eyes crinkled. "This is beautiful, Emma," he said softly. "Can I keep it?" Emma nodded proudly. The teacher, Miss Maya, came over and thanked Keanu for what he had done. "Emma has been laughing all day," she said. "She made friends already. She even wants to learn to read again." Hearing that, Keanu felt something warm spread through his chest. This was what he wanted. Not fame, not praise, but real change for one small life. As he walked through the center, he saw more kids like Emma. Some were shy, some loud, some giggling in corners. He sat with them, listening to their stories. He played a quick game of cards with Sam, who kept winning and laughing so hard his sides hurt. When it was time to go, Emma walked him to the gate. She held his hand tightly. "Will you come back?" she asked. Keanu squeezed her small hand. Gently, "Yes, Emma, I will always come back." What he didn't know yet was that outside the center, more people were waiting. Reporters, photographers, curious neighbors. The story had reached places Keanu never imagined. Some wanted to praise him, some wanted to question him. But the truth was simple. One lunch, one small act of listening, had sparked something that couldn't be stopped. And for Keanu, this was only the beginning of a promise he had made under that cafe tree. That kindness, once planted, could grow roots deeper than anyone could see. Word of Keanu's simple act spread far and wide, faster than even he imagined. It wasn't just the local news anymore. Big newspapers, radio shows, and online bloggers picked up the story of the poor girl who asked for lunch. But most of all, they wrote about the man who didn't. Look away. Emma's drawing of the park bench and the tree was shared everywhere. People saw her tiny figure sitting beside a man who listened, and they felt something stir inside them, a soft reminder that everyone needs someone to care. Back at the community center, life for Emma, Sam, and Sophia began to shift like a door. Slowly opening, Sophia found work sewing clothes for a small local shop. It wasn't much, but it was honest, and every day she came home with bread, milk, and sometimes a small treat for Emma and Sam. For the first time in years, she no longer worried if tomorrow would bring an empty plate. Emma sat in class with other children now. She held her pencil clumsily, but her letters grew straighter each day. She loved reading stories with Miss Maya and drawing pictures for the wall. Sometimes she'd look at the old drawing of her and Keanu under the tree, taped above her desk. Whenever she felt scared or small again, she'd whisper to herself, "He said he will always come back." One morning, the community center received a surprise delivery. New backpacks filled with notebooks, pencils, and colorful storybooks. Each bag had a tiny tag that simply said, "For Dreamers." There was no name on the box, but everyone knew where it came from. Outside, on the other side of town, Keanu sat in a small cafe with David and Lily. They talked quietly about what had happened since that day. Lily's voice was excited but careful. "Keanu, the story has inspired thousands. People are donating to charities, volunteering, even starting small acts of kindness in their own cities." Keanu stirred his tea, thinking, "That's good," he said softly. "But people need to remember it's not about me. It's about the Emmas of the world. If they look around, they'll see her everywhere." Lily nodded. "I know, but you showed them how. You reminded them that it's okay to care." Just then, David pulled out a folder. "Keanu, there's something I want you to see," he said. Inside were letters from people all over the world. Mothers thanking him for reminding them to hug their kids tighter. teachers who read the story aloud in class to teach compassion, even a man who wrote that he shared his lunch with a homeless veteran because of Emma's story. Keanu read a few of the letters, his eyes soft, but his heart heavy too. "It shouldn't take my name for people to do good," he said. "But maybe it's a start." After they finished their tea, Keanu asked Lily to join him for a walk. They crossed the same park where he had met Emma. He pointed at the old tree and the bench. "This place changed her life," he said quietly. "But it changed mine too." Lily looked at him, curiosity shining in her eyes. "How so?" Keanu took a moment to find the words. "People see the movies. They think they know me. But they don't see the empty nights. They don't see the days when I felt invisible too. When Emma asked to have lunch with me, it was like she saw me, not the actor, but the man." His words hung in the air like a secret truth. Lily felt her throat tighten. She realized this wasn't just about charity. It was about connection to people who needed each other in ways no one else would ever fully understand. As they talked, a few people recognized Keanu. One young man, holding a small paper bag of food, stopped him. "Sir, I just want to say thank you," he said shyly. "Because of you, I started giving my extra lunch to a man on my street. He smiles at me every day now." Keanu thanked him and patted his shoulder. He watched the young man walk away and whispered, "That's how it grows." Later that week, Emma invited Keanu to her school. She wanted to show him her classroom, her new backpack, and the storybook she loved most. He arrived early, wearing his old jeans and a baseball cap pulled low, but the children recognized him anyway. They rushed over, laughing, tugging at his hands. Emma grabbed his hand and led him to a small corner where her drawing hung proudly on the wall. "See, that's us," she said, her eyes shining. "Miss Maya put it there so everyone remembers to be kind." Keanu knelt beside her. "Emma, you're braver than any hero I ever played in a movie," he said. She giggled and hugged him tight. Before he left, he looked at the teacher. "Take care of them," he said. Miss Maya nodded, her eyes warm. "We will, and thank you, Keanu, for reminding us what really matters." As he stepped outside, the sun dipped low behind the old tree in the yard. The same tree from Emma's drawing, the same bench where hope had begun. He stood there for a moment, feeling the breeze on his face, knowing this story was not just about a lunch. It was about how one simple act could echo through hearts, cities, and maybe even the world. But he also knew something else. There would always be more Emmas waiting under different trees, holding invisible signs that said, "Will you sit with me?" And Keanu promised himself again and again that he would. Days turned into weeks, and the story of the poor girl who asked for lunch spread like roots under soil. Quiet but unstoppable, people around the city began doing small, gentle things for each other. It wasn't loud or grand. A shop owner left extra bread for kids who looked hungry. An old lady whereupon warm hats for children she saw waiting at the bus stop in winter. A man who never spoke to his neighbors knocked on doors just to say, "Are you okay?" Emma, Sam, and Sophia settled into a new rhythm every morning. Sophia packed a tiny lunch for Emma and Sam. She walked them to the community center before going to her sewing job. When she walked back home in the evenings, she no longer felt like the walls of her small apartment were closing in. They were still poor. They still worried. But they weren't alone anymore. Keanu visited them whenever he could. Sometimes he sat with Sophia in her small kitchen, sipping tea while she told him stories about her childhood in another country. She laughed when she spoke, a sound that felt new in her home. Sometimes he walked with Sam to the park, playing silly games that made people look twice. A movie star chasing a laughing boy with sticks and stones. But what made Keanu happiest was seeing Emma's face each time he came by the community center. She would run up to him, her arms flung wide, calling him my friend Keanu. She didn't care about the cameras that sometimes followed him now. She didn't care about the people who whispered his name. She cared that he kept his promise. One cold evening, Keanu sat in his quiet apartment, staring at a letter on his table. It was from a rich businessman who had read about his lunch with Emma. The man wrote that he wanted to donate a large sum to the community center, but he wanted his name on a gold plaque above the door. Keanu read the letter twice. Then he shook his head and folded it away. He knew money was important, but he also knew pride could make people forget why they were helping in the first place. He called David that night. "Tell him no plaque," Keanu said softly. "Tell him to come sit with the kids instead. Tell him to listen to them. They don't need a gold sign. They need someone who sees them." Meanwhile, Lily, the young journalist, continued to follow the ripples of that first lunch. She was careful never to share photos of Emma's face, never to use her full name. She protected Emma's small world while showing the bigger world what kindness could do. Her articles were shared in schools, workplaces, and even big boardrooms where important people sat around tables, trying to remember what hope looked like. That one morning, Lily called Keanu and asked if he would speak at a local youth event. "They don't want a celebrity," she told him. "They want the man who said yes to a hungry girl." Keanu didn't like speeches. He never had. But he agreed because he knew this was not about him. So on a warm Saturday, he stood in front of a room full of teenagers. Some wore designer shoes. Others had holes in theirs. Some crossed their arms, pretending not to care. But as Keanu told them about Emma, about the simple question, "Can I have lunch with you?" the room grew quiet. "We all walk past people," Keanu said softly. "We all say not now or someone else will help. But what if you're the someone? What if you're the only one?" A girl at the back wiped her eyes. A boy looked down at his shoes, remembering how he'd mocked a classmate for not having lunch money. In that room, walls people carried inside themselves began to crumble. Just a little, Emma's life kept blooming in small, brave ways. She learned to write her name clearly. She read her first full storybook and ran all the way home to read it again to Sam. One day, she sat under the tree in the park, the same one from her drawing, and scribbled a new picture. This time there were more people under the tree, a mother, a brother, a kind man, and tiny figures in the background. "These are the people who help," she told her teacher. One evening, after a long day, Keanu came to visit Sophia's family again. Emma had something to show him. She pulled out her newest drawing and pointed at the tree. "This tree is like your heart," she said, her voice so clear and sure. "It has many branches. It gives shade to everyone." Keanu looked at her, speechless for a moment. He felt a sting behind his eyes. How could a girl who had known so much pain understand something so deep? He hugged her gently, wishing the whole world could see what he saw in her: resilience, hope, and the pure light of a child who never stopped dreaming, even when she was hungry. That night, as he walked home through the quiet streets, Keanu realized something. He had always tried to be kind, but Emma had given him back something even bigger. She reminded him that one small yes could turn into 1,000 more. She reminded him that people are not problems to be solved, but stories waiting to be heard. And he knew, deep in his bones, that the world had not seen the last of Emma's story, or the kindness it was planting in places he couldn't even imagine yet. The days grew warmer, and tiny flowers bloomed along the sidewalks where Emma used to stand with her plastic bag, hoping for a kind stranger. But now, she no longer waited at street corners. She waited inside a small, cheerful classroom, surrounded by crayons, books, and new friends who didn't care about her old shoes or her past. They only knew her as Emma, the girl who could draw whole stories on scraps of paper and make everyone smile. Keanu still came to visit. Not every day. He had his work, his travels, his quiet moments alone when he needed to heal too. But he always came back, just like he promised. Each time, Emma ran to him with a new drawing. Each time, Sophia offered him tea in chipped cups that felt warmer than any fine china could ever be. One afternoon, the community center buzzed with unusual excitement. The kids sat on the floor, whispering and pointing at a big box near the door. Emma tugged on Keanu's sleeve. "Open it," she said, her eyes wide. Inside were dozens of brand new books, art supplies, and even tiny gardening tools. Tucked between the sketchbooks was a note: "Keep planting your dreams. The world needs your garden." There was no signature, but everyone knew who had sent it. And this time, Keanu hadn't done it alone. People all over the city had started sending gifts, letters, and small donations to help kids like Emma. It was no longer just about one lunch or one promise. It was a wave that kept moving, touching hearts Keanu would never meet. Emma and Sam spent their afternoons in the small garden behind the center, digging up weeds and planting flowers. The kids called it Emma's garden, even though she always told them it belonged to everyone. She liked to sit by the sunflowers, sketching their tall stalks reaching for the sky. They reminded her that she, too, was growing. Lily, the young journalist, came by one morning to see how things were going. She found Keanu kneeling beside Emma, helping her pull up weeds. "You know," Lily said with a soft laugh, "you're the only movie star I know who'd rather have dirt on his jeans than lights on his face." Keanu smiled, brushing soil from his hands. "Lights fade," he said simply. "But maybe this garden won't." Emma tugged on Lily's sleeve. "Miss Lily, do you want to see my tree?" she asked. She pulled her to a mural inside the classroom. On the wall, a big tree spread its branches, just like the one from her first drawing. But now, the tree had many new roots twisting deep into the ground. Round it, tiny figures sat under its shade, some laughing, some resting, all safe. "Every kind thing people do," Emma explained, tapping the branches with her finger, "makes the tree bigger. And the roots grow so deep that they hold everyone together." Lily took a photo, but she didn't post it online. Some things, she knew, were too sacred for clicks and shares. Some things were meant to stay safe in people's hearts. That evening, Keanu stood outside the center, watching the children run through the garden as the sky turned gold. Sophia sat on the steps, her hands folded in her lap. She looked stronger now, her eyes bright with a hope that once seemed impossible. "Thank you," she said to Keanu, her voice steady, "not just for Emma, for seeing us, for sitting with us when no one else would." Keanu shook his head. "You did the hard part," he said. "You kept going when the world told you to stop. I just answered a question." As the sun dipped behind the old tree in the park nearby, Keanu thought about that day when a shy voice asked him, "Can I have lunch with you?" He realized he had needed that question as much as Emma did. It reminded him of who he was when the cameras were gone. A man who could still choose to see people, to sit with them, to say yes. That night, he walked through the city streets alone. Around him, life hummed quietly, couples laughing under streetlights, a boy giving his sandwich to a man on a bench, a mother hugging her child a little tighter. He felt a peace settle in his chest. He knew the world was far from perfect, but he also knew that one small act, one honest yes, could crack open even the coldest walls. In a tiny apartment, Emma placed her drawing of the tree beside her bed. She whispered to her teddy bear, "Tommy, one day, I'll help someone like he helped me." She closed her eyes, dreaming of more branches, deeper roots, and shade for everyone who needed it. And somewhere, under that wide city sky, kindness kept growing, strong, quiet, unstoppable, because one hungry girl asked for lunch, and one man chose to sit down and listen.